Thank you very much to Jan Coe and Pat Luna for providing our music for us today. Beautiful gathering music, thank you. My name is Chris Edkins, and I'm a member of the worship committee. I will be your worship associate for today. Welcome, everyone, to Westside Unitarian Universalist Church. Whether you are in the building in person with us today on July 28th, 2024, or whether you are joining us out there on the internet, following along as the service is being broadcast, or whether you're watching a little later in the watch again, you are just a part of this, just as much a part of this community as those of us who are here today. So welcome, everyone. We have some announcements in your order of service, and for those of you who are out there in internet land, you'll have seen those. The announcements are also in our weekly newsletter. If you are not getting our weekly newsletter that comes through in the email, you can fill in one of the forms, a contact form. They have them out there in the lobby, or see one of us and we'll get one for you. Oh yeah, there's a QR code too. That you can use in the order of service, and you can sign up for that newsletter and get all that stuff to knowledge about what's going on. So I'll just draw attention to a couple of the announcements. Jan Coe, who is playing for us today, will be doing a sound concert this coming Thursday here at the church at 7 p.m. So if you would like to experience that, there'll be like bowls and gongs, and it's a wonderful experience. It's if you can make it here on Thursday, I would heartily recommend that you come to that. The other thing is that there will be no Earth Church in August. It's been cancelled for August, and because so many people are out of town. And also in September, Earth Church will be combined with our Spirit Quest outing that we're having the weekend of September 20th through 22nd, which it will be at Elkmont Campground in the Smoky Mountains. So if you are a regular attendee at Earth Church, just be aware there won't be Earth Church in August, and if you want to do Earth Church in September, come to the Spirit Quest in the Smokies. And I believe you have some other things you want to share with us, Carol.
I do. Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you all here. If I haven't had a chance to meet you yet, I'm Reverend Carol Bodeau. I'm privileged to serve here as minister. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I want to say a special good morning to anyone who might be visiting us for the first time, either virtually or in person. Westside is a community that is focused on having love at our center and living that in real ways in the world. So we've been making some changes here recently. There's quite a revitalization actually going on in Unitarian Universalism, which is mirrored here in our community. Some of you have heard me say this, but I'll say it again. Our denomination just adopted a new statement of principles and purposes, and that the core of that is transforming the world through liberating love. And here we focus on, coming together with a common loving purpose and sharing common actions of care in the world and building a strong community. So a couple of things I want to call your attention to that are new and exciting. If you've been around a long time, you will notice this difference. If you're relatively new, you won't notice it. But if you look at the front of your order of service, for those of you who are here in the building, we're rolling out a new logo.
Yeah.
That's that new logo. So our old logo looked like these doves. Our new logo has this chalice. Now, this chalice image is actually what is used by the Unitarian Universalist Association, the outer part of it. We've got our little Tennessee mountains and sunrise in the back, but the shape of that chalice on the logo, the chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, and that particular chalice is the one that is sort of the denomination as a whole uses, and many congregations have chalices that look like that. The good news is that our board has just approved the purchase of a big chalice, a big metal chalice that the aesthetics and marketing team will be purchasing soon for us, so that we will have a really big chalice in our sanctuary. And this new logo, which matches that, was created by Beth Sandage. Some of you who've been here for a long time know Beth. Beth Sandage is an artist. She is a designer. She has been associated with Westside for many years, and she's been working for a long time to create this new logo for us. And we want to send a big thank you to Beth, because she created some designs, and then of course, because we're Unitarian Universalists, committees had lots of opinions about those images. So anyway, just notice that some changes are coming here. There's going to be a revitalization of our building. Some of you might be coming on Tuesday to help us do some cleaning. We're going to be adding some new furniture. We're going to be doing some painting maybe. Anyway, it's a lot of very exciting things happening here. So we're really glad that you are here with us to enjoy those new possibilities and those exciting changes. You know, as Chris said, today we have Jan playing the music, and we also are going to be having some special music today that is focused around some Eastern traditions that are at the center of Hinduism and Buddhism, some chanting and things like that, that you're going to get the opportunity to practice, because we're going to be talking about ways that we hold ourselves accountable and we help each other be accountable. And these traditions, Unitarian Universalism is a denomination that looks to many different traditions for wisdom and insight and inspiration. So today we're looking to the Eastern traditions. In a moment, Chris is going to invite our Himalayan bowl to sound. And I just want to name again that these bowls, we use this bowl each week as part of calling us into our center, becoming fully present. This is a tradition that comes out of the Himalayas. It comes out of the ancient Eastern traditions of that region. These bowls are not really meant to be understood as just, things you gong around. They have a deep spiritual purpose. Jan will be sharing a lot of that sort of presence in her concert later this week. The sound is meant to carry us into a place of deep awareness, deep presence, and deep reflection. It's meant to be healing. So in a moment, Chris is going to invite our bowl to sound, and as he does so, I invite you to come into that kind of framework. Take a couple deep breaths. Notice that you're in a body. Notice that you're in this room, in this moment, in this community. Even if you're here virtually, take those deep breaths and allow yourself to become fully present as the bowl sounds and invites us to go deeper.
As Reverend Carroll mentioned, the flaming chalice is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith, and we light that chalice each week at the beginning of our service. And today our chalice lighting words come from the Bhagavad Gita, some words about karma, which is the topic of today's sermon. As the heat of a blazing fire reduces all wood to ashes, so the fire of true self-awareness burns to ashes all karma. Those who surrender to Brahman, all self-centered attachments are like a lotus leaf floating clean and dry in water. Sin cannot touch them.
for us. Thank you. Thank you, Brad, for turning that up. Can you hear me on this one now? It's going to be important because Jan is going to explain our singing, and these are call and response songs, so Jan is going to be leading, and Chris and I are going to be helping out.
All right, so when Carol and I discussed the service and what music, we both kind of independently decided that doing a couple of kirtan chants would be appropriate with the topic. Kirtan is a form of call and response, singing and chanting, using the mantras that exist out there. And its purpose, it's the central practice of bhakti yoga. It's my understanding that it's about 1,500 years old and started in the temples, and then demand for it came and it got moved out to people. And then it moved to the West. One of the famous people that brought it to the West was George Harrison. So what we're doing today is, the first one is indeed a call and response chant, but the purpose of kirtan is joy, connection, and community. So the mantra occupies your mind, the music embodies your breath and what you're doing. And the point is to connect with yourself, connect with your community around you, and connect with whatever else you personally connect to, even if that's not something else. Maybe it's just yourself. So we will do, the first one is one I call Aham Prema, because that's the first two words. Aham Prema means I am love. So it fits right in with the phrase for the Unitarian Church now. The second phrase of it is Om Aim Namaha, which, like many things in Hinduism, have lots of meaning and symbolism, but I included it in this chant because it's a request for wisdom, but even more, it's a request for discernment. And personal opinion, I think we need a lot of discernment right now. So whatever you all want to take that away. And then the last phrase is Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, which means may all people everywhere be happy and free. So I am love, I'm requesting wisdom and discernment, and I am wishing for all the same thing, and that everyone be happy and free. So that's what we're doing.
So now if you cannot track all those words, it is okay.
It happens over and over.
It does. It happens over and over. Give it your best shot. If you feel like it, hum if you feel like it, or just listen and sway with the music if you feel like that.
Yeah.
Because I'm just learning them too. So
Om is appropriate.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I will start it and just kind of get it going, and then I'll sing it, and Carol and Chris will be the response, and you all sing with them. Okay. Aham Prema, Aham Prema, Aham Prema.
Am prema, am prema, am prema.
Aham Prema, Aham Prema, Aham Prema.
Am prema, am prema, am prema.
Aham Prema, Aham Prema, Aham Prema.
Am prema, am prema, am prema.
Aham Prema, Aham Prema, Aham Prema.
Am prema, am prema, am prema.
Om Aim Namaha, Om Aim Namaha. Sukino Bhavantu, Loka Samasta, Sukino Bhavantu, Loka Samasta, Sukino Bhavantu. May all people everywhere be happy, happy and free. Good job. Good job.
Well, thank you all for doing that experiment with us. You're going to get another chance at the end of the service. The nature of music, we were talking about this morning in our spiritual practices. The music we are accustomed to is deeply rooted in how we regulate our bodies and our nervous systems. So often, for people who are used to Western styles of music, Western music is very linear. It's going somewhere. It's got a project. It's a story, usually. Eastern music is different than that, and this is related to what we're going to talk about in a minute, about the theologies of these different traditions. So some of you either were here last week or maybe heard this online. Last week, we talked about the nature of the concept of sin. We're sort of in the middle of a series of talking about theological or religious concepts that are rooted in particular traditions. And because Unitarian Universalism is a path that includes all different traditions, we are people who, some of us are explicitly atheist or agnostic, others are Christian, others are Jewish, others are Taoist. We have everything in our community. So we explore all these different traditions. So we've been asking the question, how do these concepts that come from other religious traditions, how do they apply in a Unitarian Universalist context? So last week we talked about sin. And the way we talked about that is that our very humanness means we're going to make mistakes. Being human means we will go astray from our best intentions sometimes. Sometimes we will do things that we just outright know we shouldn't do, but in the moment, it just feels like we're going to do it anyway, right? And all of these kinds of actions, whether they are errors of omission or errors of intention, mistakes made in ignorance or wrongs done intentionally, perhaps even to cause harm. Maybe lack of self-awareness or self-righteousness or self-aggrandizement. These sins, and even what we would call sins of excess humility or excess submissiveness or subservience, all of these and so many more are the ways that we can demonstrate our very human limitations, frailties, failings. So that's just part of being a person on this planet. If you're a person on this planet, which I think includes all of us today, right? We are all going to make mistakes. We are going to all do things that we think, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. Now, some religions say that that's innate to our nature, that we are inherently bad. Others say it's a conditional problem. So some say it's nature, some say it's nurture. But either way, we're left with the next question, which is, what do we do with the consequences of our human limitations and failings? If they're inevitable, they're going to have consequences. How do we respond to that? Now, in the constructions, the theologies we talked about last week, which come from what we'll call the Abrahamic traditions, there's a certain way of dealing with that. So let me define what the Abrahamic traditions are. The Abrahamic traditions are generally understood to be Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. because these three traditions are all rooted in the same set of core stories that start with Abraham, the core father figure in the original stories. So all of these traditions hold the stories of Abraham at their center. So these Abrahamic traditions have differences, but some basic ways that they deal with error or sin. And there's usually through some kind of reparation made before death in order to prevent a punishment after death. So in other words, in many traditions, when an error occurs, you have to take certain religious actions to prevent the consequence of punishment. Okay? But we're going to look at a different approach to that from the Eastern traditions. These traditions deal slightly differently with human imperfection and error. We're going to look specifically at just a little sliver of Hinduism and Buddhism. Now, these traditions date back at least 2,000 years before the birth of Jesus of Nazareth in the Indus Valley. And we use the term Hinduism actually to describe what's actually kind of a wide range of traditions. They aren't all exactly the same. It's a set of philosophical and religious understandings. But the word Hindu actually referred just to the people who lived by that river. Okay, the Indus. So it didn't mean the religions before. It just meant people who lived there. In the 19th century, a British colonialist, because that was who was in control of the region at the time, was the British colonial system. Somebody used the specific term to refer to name a religion, okay? And even then, this isn't a homogeneous group that it describes, but it's, like I said, a kind of wide range of philosophies and traditions across the region. So here's a way you can think about the term Hindu. It is ironically very much like the term Indian used in North America. Ironically, because, of course, the people who used the term Indian thought they were meeting Indians in the Indies when they came here, and they weren't. And so both of these words are coined to refer to a wide range of people with distinct cultures and life ways, okay? So you have colonials giving a name to a broad group of people or a broad group of traditions, which is actually more nuanced than that. So regardless of that, we're gonna consider that broad group because they do have some common aspects. A broader way to think about them is to think of them as Vedic traditions. So these traditions are rooted in some texts, some very specific religious texts, spiritual, philosophical texts called the Vedas. They were poems and hymns written in ancient Sanskrit between 1500 and 1200 before the Common Era in the Indus Valley region. So these texts are at the root of all of this flowering of religion and culture and music and theology and philosophy that comes from them. So we're going to start with this broad category of what is often called as Hindu thought, and we're going to, in a minute after that, we'll look at the Buddhist thought about one very specific concept, karma. Now, just raise your hand. Have you heard the term karma before? You all heard the term karma. You probably used the term karma maybe once or twice. Oh, you can tell what their karma was. You look at other people and you go, oh, they're going to pay for that, you know. We have this concept of karma. We have misunderstandings of karma. In Sanskrit, the word karma just means action. Okay? In Hinduism, the concept of karma is one whereby the consequences of our actions are ever present in our experience and must always be considered in everything we do. So this is a slight nuance. Rather than expecting punishment from a particular deity or divine being for sinning, this idea of karma sets us up for a different series of cause and effects. Karma is a concept where any action has an inevitable and almost natural consequence, right? So the consequence isn't really a punishment by an angry or affronted deity or God. Instead, it's sort of a logical and to a certain extent inevitable result of the action from which it arises. You see how that's different? One is not punished by God in these constructions. In the Eastern traditions, one is not punished by God for hitting another person. Instead, the natural consequence of hitting another person is that they're going to be upset, hurt, angry, sad, and they're then going to act in ways that make sense for someone who just got hit, right? And these actions, whatever they choose to do, are probably going to be undesirable to the person who hit them. It makes sense, right? Good chance if I hit Chris, he's not going to like it and he might hit me back. Or he just might have his feelings hurt and he might never speak to me again. It's not so much that I'm going to be punished by some external force, but that the natural consequence of that action is undesirable. In Hinduism, karma is essentially a way to describe a kind of cosmic homeostasis, or natural balancing process. What goes around, comes around. It's important to understand, too, that karma is distinct from punishment in another way that's important. In the constructions we were talking about last week, punishment also reinforces the power of the divine being. It helps us make sure we understand the power of that force that's punishing us. But in this framing, karma is just the universe's natural way of restoring balance. And more importantly, it's meant to help us grow and develop emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So we'll go back to me hitting Chris. If I hit Chris, rather than being punished by some external force, the natural consequence of his response is meant to help me learn something. It's meant to help me understand better how a way I can be to be a better person. It's meant to give me a natural consequence to help me grow and develop into a better person. Karma is understood to always be guiding us towards better and better versions of ourselves. Its ultimate purpose is our spiritual evolution. Unlike the concepts of sin, and particularly originally sin that we talked about last week, the concept of karma includes a basic assumption that humans can always improve and do better. Think about how that's different from original sin. Original sin says kind of the opposite of that. That we are in karma, we are on a shared journey towards greater and greater understanding and behaving more and more fully as our best selves. Another important understanding about karma in the Hindu tradition is that karma can be good or bad. Our actions can generate positive and negative results. So if instead of hitting Chris, I choose to say to Chris, Chris, I'm feeling really upset right now. I'm feeling angry. That's a completely different choice. And this is, of course, essential to understanding that new actions and new choices can change the consequences of past actions. We can make better choices. We can generate what's called good karma in a way that atones for or reverses previous bad decisions. So I hit Chris yesterday, which generated some bad feelings, but today I came back and apologized. And I said, I am so sorry. I was really upset. I overacted. I didn't hit Chris, by the way. I've never hit Chris. I never will hit Chris. Never will. Well, I won't. I will continue to make good choices. But I have the opportunity, even if I've made a choice in the past, I always have the opportunity to make a new choice to make things better. So this is a very different construction of how we're going to choose good actions. Do you see how different this is? Instead of being told, you're inherently a bad person, struggle with it and do your best, we're being told, hey, you know what? It's natural to make mistakes, but we can always, always, always improve and do better. Now, even more importantly, here's an important thing about the concept of karma. It's not even so much the action that matters as the intention behind the action. Okay? The intention has as much, maybe even more influence on the karmic impact than the action itself. Pure intentions, even if the action goes awry, can still generate good karma. I said something, I blurted out something trying to be helpful, and it made the other person feel bad, but my heart was in the right place. I meant to be helpful. On the other side of this, selfish motives, negative motives, even if they result in actions that look good on the surface, can generate negative karma. So take, for example, the person who's extravagantly generous and makes sure that everybody knows they're giving a lot of money and they're being really philanthropic and they're doing all this good stuff, right? That can generate some negative karma. To give a large amount of money for the prideful purpose of being viewed as a good person that everyone should look at, that can generate negative karma, while the poor person who is unable to make any material contribution, but who quietly and anonymously sends prayers and good wishes, that person is generating good karma. So our intentions in this understanding matter. Now, so last week we talked about how in these Abrahamic traditions, there are lots of ways to think about sin. There are lots of varieties of sins. And there are also lots of varieties of karma. Remember, it just means action. So there are ways to think about it. So for example, sanchita karma is the compilation of all your actions in the past. Now, in Hinduism, people who are Hindu believe in reincarnation. They believe that we live multiple lives, that after we die, our souls are reborn. So for people who are in that tradition and other people who believe in reincarnation, karma goes from one lifetime to the next, to the next, to the next. So sanchita karma is like all of the stuff you've accumulated through all of your lives, through all of time. It's kind of like the backdrop. And out of that backdrop, circumstances arise. But even if you don't believe in multiple lives, you can think of it as the backdrop of experiences that you have had that might give rise to surprising things in the future. Another way to understand karma is this is called prabhada karma. And these words are in Sanskrit, okay? So this is the ancient language this tradition comes from. Prabhada karma is the very specific blueprint for this life in which specific circumstances are playing out. So an example of this might be, you were born in the Bronx instead of Knoxville. It's a thing, right? There are going to be differences in your life if you were born in the Bronx versus Knoxville. There are going to be differences in your life if you have 3 sisters or no sisters. There are going to be differences in your life if your dad's a teacher or if your dad's a doctor. The kinds of things, or if when you were a child you had a serious illness, or if all the things that happen to us or that are the circumstances of our lives, these are things out of which consequences arise. Finally, there's this concept called agami karma, and that's probably the most important one for us to think about. It's the karma or the consequences you are generating through your choices today. What are you choosing to do today? And what will the effects of those choices be? Hindu teacher Ravi Shankar describes karma as like waves on the ocean. There's just things are going to happen and there are going to be consequences. Every action results in an equal and opposite reaction. Anybody heard that in science, right? These wave patterns happen. If I do something, it's going to have an effect. We cannot escape that cycle in our world. Things happen, and as a result of those things, other things happen. It's the natural flow. But Ravi Shankar tells us that the most important thing to focus on is our free will in the midst of that flow. So he talks about karma by saying that first, we're going to experience, if you just all pause for a minute, you can ask yourself, what are the impressions, the memories, the experiences that are with you in your mind and your heart from past experiences? The past is with us. How many of us still feel impacted by choices we've made in the past? Some that we regret and some that we're glad about. Every one of us right now can think of something that happened before now that's still with us right now, right? Okay, next we have the possibility of action in the present moment. We're in that wave, we're in that backdrop, we are in that experience of all the things that have already happened. But here we are today. We have free will. We get to make choices. And finally, in the future, there are the things, the actions that other people will take, the actions we might take as a result of a choice I make today. So I can make a choice today to be kind, to be honest, to ask someone a question, to reach out to. I can make choices today, which will then result in actions in the future. If I make a choice today to go up to someone and say, "You seem concerned. Do you want to talk?" Who knows what kind of actions that might generate on their part or on mine? I might make a new friend. I might help someone get help that they need. I might just ease their day and then they go home and they're kind to someone else, right? So these actions resulting in actions like an ever-expanding wave, that's what karma is, okay? So there are a couple other key concepts in Hinduism and the other Eastern traditions that go along with this idea of karma, and I just want to share that. So you will often hear in Buddhism, people will say that they are loyal to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, which means to the Buddha, to the Sangha is the community, and the Dharma is really important because the Dharma is the teachings. Right? The Dharma is the list of teachings or the set of moral guidelines that help us make those good choices. Now, in Unitarian Universalism, we don't have a specific set of teachings. We sort of are ready to listen to anybody who's got good advice. Right? I don't care what tradition it comes from. If it's good advice that helps me be a better source of love and kindness and care in the world, I'm going to listen to it. So the Dharma, broadly defined, is teachings that help us make those good choices. And in Hinduism, specifically, what we're trying to avoid is this repetitious cycle of getting stuck being reborn, because then we just keep having to go through struggles and struggles and struggles. So the Dharma teaches concepts and practices to help us stay on that journey to being our best selves. There are tools like what's called seva, which means service. There's meditation. Chanting is a tool that is used to promote devotion, love, kindness, happiness, self-awareness, well-being, right? These are tools and techniques that are used. We practiced some of this morning in our spiritual practices service. We practiced some chanting because they're meant to help us kind of stay in that centered place so that we can make good choices. Now, Buddhism is the younger religion. It started about 400 to 500 years before the Common Era. And so it's in the context of this Vedic society. The Vedas were much older. People had been studying them and reading them and talking about them. Prince Siddhartha, who became the Gautama Buddha, was himself a student of the teachings of the Vedas. So you have this guy who's in the culture of the Vedas, and he studies them, and he goes off and decides to find enlightenment. That's how we get the Buddha. The word in Buddha, the Buddhist word, which is in the Pali language, it's not in Sanskrit. The Pali word for karma is kama, K-A-M-A or M-M-A, kama. And in Buddhism, they very specifically mean volitional action or choice, making a choice. And in Buddhism, there tends to be a slightly broader focus on that kind of like cyclical nature of our karma. So in the Buddha's day, in those earlier Vedic teachings, karma was understood mainly in a linear way. This is where our music comes in. Karma was understood to be primarily linear. A past action leads to a present circumstance, which gives rise to current actions, which result in future circumstances. You all know the cause-effect, right? The cause-effect chain. Every time we see something bad, we're looking for the cause of it, right? How many of us are big problem solvers? Yeah, you can admit it. Something's not going the way we like it. We're uncomfortable. We want to know what the cause is so we can change it, right? So we can fix it. That's a fairly linear way of understanding things. Buddhism complexified this a little bit by seeing multiple present actions in a field of multiple existing circumstances, sort of more like a broader web, okay? The reason that I say that this is related to the music is you think about the music, that repetitious, cyclical nature of the music. There is in these traditions a deeper understanding of the cyclical, repetitious nature of things, as opposed to the narrative that goes from beginning to middle to end, period, done, right? The Western mind is conditioned to a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's done. How many of us have had experiences that we told ourselves, it happened, it's done, I never have to think about it again? Was that true? Was it truly done, or did it ever come back up? Things are more cyclical than that. And this is something the Eastern traditions recognize. So what that results in, theologically speaking, is an understanding of karma, as ways in which we tend to recreate the same patterns over and over and over and over again. How many of us have a few of those? We're like, I know I shouldn't do this thing again. I'm going to do it again. I keep trying to not do it. Or we try to get a new pattern. Our entire concept of New Year's Eve is based in the fact that we think we should change our patterns, and we have a really hard time doing it. So in the Buddhist construction, we can understand karma as patterns of action that we repeat and recreate over and over again, and we get stuck in these repetitions despite negative outcomes, right? I'm going to do it again, even though I know I don't like the way it turns out. So the goal then, in this way of understanding, is less to undo one particular bad act that happened once, and more to ask ourselves, what are my repeating habits and patterns of thoughts and actions that keep coming up over and over and over again? Buddhism also stresses the influence of other forces on this web of experience. So, for example, natural forces that are beyond our control, like an earthquake, a flood, a heat wave, right? Or just the changing of the seasons. You're not going to want to go to the beach and swim in February, probably. Some of us might, but most of us don't want to do that, right? So we can take into account that there are forces that we can't control. Another important distinction between Hinduism and Buddhism is that Hinduism does involve the presence of deities, right? So in Hinduism, there is this idea of a god or many gods, whereas in Buddhism, generally that is not true. So karma, the Buddhist version of this, doesn't have any judgment associated with it. There's no justice to be corrected because there's no judge. Unless, of course, we mistakenly put ourselves in the position of judging others, which is a pattern which has consequences, which I think all of us can acknowledge that at least once or twice we've gotten in that particular habit of thought, right? The habit of judgment, which has consequences. So if there's no external judge, karma functions more like natural law. What is good isn't good because some external force said it was good. It's good because it's life-affirming, because it's healing, because it's loving, because it's helpful. And what is bad is not bad because some other person or some presence said it's bad. It's bad because it's life-denying, or life-limiting, or restricting, or hurtful, or causes harm. Now, Buddhists hold a wide range of perspectives on reincarnation. Some believe it and some don't. So the point here is not that we have to believe some of these theologies of these traditions, but we can take from these traditions some really important messages about how we repeat patterns, how we react to certain things, and what the consequences are of doing that. Okay? Here's a few things that I think are really important to take away from just a little short study of karma. First, both the Hindu concept of karma and the Buddhist understanding of karma invite us to think about the consequences of our actions before we do them. They invite us to be attentive and aware that if I take an action, it's going to have a consequence. And the focus isn't on not getting caught by some external force that's going to punish us for the action. It's that the action is inevitably going to result in something that matters. And that's for good things, what we would call good things and bad things. That I don't need to get rewarded or punished by some external force. My choices are going to generate healing and love in the world, or they're going to generate pain in the world. I get to choose, okay? Now, in addition to that, our actions and consequences, when we think about karma, are set in a bigger stage. It's a big stage. It's not just me and Chris that are impacted by our interaction of whether or not I say, I'm angry, let's talk about it, or whether I hit him, right? That's not personal. It's collective. That interaction then spreads to other people who care about us. And then that spreads to the people they care about. And that spreads to the bigger community. In fact, our actions don't just impact us, they impact everyone and everything around us, spreading outward like that wave, think of that wave, until the whole community, maybe even the whole universe, is affected. Now, in Unitarian Universalism, one of the ways we talk about that is we use the word interdependence. Everything's connected. We're all connected. We're not just connected to humans, we're connected to all the other species on the planet, all the other beings. So our connections mean that our actions impact everything. I also think it's important to consider that this idea that our intention matters, okay? Maybe even more than the actual action. So I'm going to keep using Chris as an example because I can trust him. If Chris and I are having a conversation and we disagree and one of us says, oh, for heaven's sakes, that's idiotic. Okay? I disagree with you. I think you should look at it this way. My intention there matters a lot. Chris is going to be able to tell if I'm saying, I think you're stupid, I don't like you, I don't want anything to do. He's going to be able to tell whether my intention is just, oh, come on, Chris, listen to my side, or if I'm really, truly disrespecting him, right? The way I use my words, the intention behind what I say and do actually has an impact. And this matters. I actually remember when I was a teenager, I had this theological conversation with an elder in my church. I was raised in the Catholic Church, and I was having a conversation with one of the matriarchs of the church. And she was making a very strong moral judgment of another person's action. She was judging a young adult who had made a choice that she disapproved of. But I could see why that young person had made that choice. There were difficult consequences of that choice, but I understood the struggles and the pain and the challenges that young person was having that caused them to make that choice. I knew they were doing the best they could. I was aware that their intention was one of healing in the best possible way they knew how to heal. And I said to this elder, who didn't appreciate it very much, I said, I think you have to take their intention into account. You can't tell by looking at someone's actions from the outside what's motivating them. You have to have the courage to go talk to them. You have to have the courage to go ask them, what's in your heart? What's happening for you right now? When we judge people based on just the simple surface level vision of their actions, we often miss the mark completely. So this idea of being curious about the intention behind an action is really important. Finally, there are two other things I like about the concept of karma or kama that are really important. The first is just simply encouraging mindful living, right? Be awake. Don't just notice the consequences of your choices that you haven't made yet. Think about the consequences of your actions that you've already taken. Doing this is often what makes people uncomfortable when I'm in the room and I'm like, where did you buy your shoes? How much do we spend on things that we don't maybe need to spend money on? Where are our resources going? You know? Oftentimes in Unitarian Universalism, our justice actions have to do with helping us wake up to the consequences of our choices. We make choices every day that are unconscious. How we spend our money, how we spend our time. Becoming awake and conscious to the consequences of those repetitious patterns of choice can be really important. It can be really uncomfortable, but really important. And another thing that's rooted in this concept of karma that's also central to Unitarian Universalism is the idea that transformation is always possible and available. We can always become more aware of the consequences of our choices and make better choices that result in healing in the world. This means that we always have the free will and the inherent dignity and worth as human beings to do things that are acts of love transforming the world. So we talked last week about sin and original sin that assert we're basically bad, and you should just, do the best you can to avoid punishment. Karma, the way I understand it, is based on the idea that we have incredible potential for transformation, incredible potential to be amazing people, incredible potential to do incredible things in the world, no matter what has already happened in your life. Yes, there are consequences to the choices we've made, and yes, we have to acknowledge those, and yes, we have the opportunity to make amends, to do things better, and we every single day have the possibility, no matter how many mistakes we've already made, of doing things that are beautiful and loving and powerful acts that transform the world. So here's your question to take away with you. Think about the ways you've thought of karma. Have you thought of it this way? Have we maybe, I know that often when we think of karma, it's like this. We see someone else getting what they deserve. Or we think, oh gosh, boy, that person, that's exactly what should have happened, right? Or me. Well, I'm just getting what I deserve. That's one way we think about karma. But what if we were to think about it different ways? How have you thought about the consequences of your past actions? Another way we often think of it is, I did this thing, I can't undo it, I'm stuck with this forever. This happened, I'll never be free of it. It'll never be gone completely. These are different ways of thinking about the consequences of the past. But we might walk away making a different assumption. Maybe if we become aware of our assumptions that we have about the consequences of our actions, we might open up a space, open up a door to really allow ourselves to make choices that are liberating. Our free will is always with us. We can be liberated to use it more consistently, to encourage one another, to support one another, to ask for encouragement when we need it, to make amends where amends need to be made, to actually do the brave and courageous thing of choosing love, of choosing care, of choosing that kind of mutuality over and over again, replacing patterns that have consequences we don't like with patterns that have consequences we do like. The purpose of this community is to help us do that, is to support us and encourage us. So I hope that today in this space you can consider maybe just one thing you'd like to do to move towards your greatest potential, towards your greatest expression of the innately beautiful, wonderful person that you are. May it be so. So, a quick note on how we do service here. You can always support all the things that this congregation does financially. But as I said earlier, financial contributions and other kinds of contributions are equally beneficial. So there are opportunities always to do things like help out at our cleanup day on Tuesday, or do some of the help with the grounds work, or currently we are sharing some of our financial contributions with our denomination, the Unitarian Universalist Association, which does all kinds of great work in the world. There's all kinds of possibilities for seva or service. You can also, if you feel like making a financial contribution, there's a box in the room, in the back of the room, where you can make a donation. You can use a QR code. You can drop cash or a check in there. You can do that online. There's a QR code, I believe, in your order of service. So there's all kinds of ways that you can make financial contributions and contributions of intention and action. The whole point of being in any kind of religious or spiritual community is to find our best selves, have the courage to express our best selves, and share our best selves to make the world a better place. I hope that that is something we can all go into the week doing. And Jan is going to help us sing our closing chant, and I believe the words to it even are sort of like that. So she's going to explain that to us.
All right, so our closing chant is a combination of the two most chanted chants in the Himalayan region. One is Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Soha. I know it sounds intimidating, but after you've sung it a while, it works out. The other is Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, the sounds in it kind of embody all the different teachings of Buddhism. It also literally means the jewel is in the lotus. And I think for us and our topic today, the symbolism of the lotus growing from the mud, because it only grows from the mud, and that cycle of growth and rebirth is a really beautiful one. And that the jewel is in the lotus, because we do all have that jewel inside of us. And Om Tare Tu Tare is a chant to green Tara. Tara is a goddess of mercy and compassion. And I love doing this at the end of get-togethers because green Tara, one of the 21 forms of Tara, is always pictured with one foot off her lotus. She's sitting on her lotus, but she always has one foot off because she's about to go out into the world and do the work of carrying compassion to the world. So that is our ending today. This one is actually sung all together. So I'll get it started, and then you all just come in as you feel comfortable. If that means you're not on the melody, that's fine. The point is just to enjoy singing and chanting together. So.
Tare, tu tare, ture soha. tare tu re so. Om tare tu tare tu re so. Om tare tu tare tu re so.
Join me.
Om tare tu tare tu re so. 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 Om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om mani padme hum, om